I, so there's a couple things that have popped up that are slightly concerning to me, and some of this stuff come opening day or whenever these guys are out there could go away immediately, right? Like Justin Steele just doesn't look right. He looked uncomfortable the last time he pitched a couple days ago, and he told us he felt like he was, like throwing in water, like felt like all day, even before he was on the mound, he said he felt off. That could just be like the doldrums of spring, and like guys go through this. I'd feel more confident if he were a veteran and this were happening, because I think, once every other year, John Lester would like look terrible for 2 weeks in spring and then just come out there and be John Lester, right? Justin Steele doesn't have that track record. So I'm a little bit like, I want to see how this looks come April. Keegan Thompson looks completely like a different pitcher. Like if he hadn't had the season he had last year, I'd be like, yeah, this guy's going to the minors. There's no doubt about it, because he's throwing 91, and that doesn't work with what he does. He can't throw 91 and be the guy he was last year. He was 94, 95 consistently last year. Sometimes when he was in those short bursts, he could hit 96, 97. I mean, this is a different pitcher if he's sitting 91. He touched 92 once last outing. He hasn't gone over an inning yet. Those types of things stand out to me. And the other thing, and this is the thing I'm least concerned about, but it's a little weird. Dansby Swanson is just swinging and missing a ton in the zone. He's really late, and that's purely timing. So that's the one that concerns me the least, because timing comes. These guys are veterans. The timing can be off. He's not hurt. The mechanics aren't screwed up. It's not like he's a bad player. We know what he can do. So the timing will come there. It's just you want to see something click before spring training. But again, like I've seen this 1,000 times. Guys look awful in the spring. Then the rail games start, and then it was like none of that happened. They just look great. So in order of concern, I'd say Keegan Thompson's at the top of my list. But yeah, it's been, I would say, as far as injuries and all those things, I'm not too concerned about this camp.
It's interesting because we had a conversation with Jed last week, and I had asked him about Dansby, and his response was very, I thought, telling. If you heard him, you knew that Dansby was having a bad spring, because he's like, oh, well, he's just preparing himself for the season, and he's taking his time and all of that stuff. When do you think it would be something that you would go, oh, this is not a great thing that's happening with Dansby?
Well, talking to the players, they're talking about, like, right now after this off day on Monday was kind of looked at as like flip the calendar and like turn it on type thing. Now we're really going all. It's not like tweaking mechanics or I'm looking for pitches only here. I'm only going to swing at this, or I'm messing with this pitch on the mound and trying to really hone in on my changeup. It's actually like, okay, now it's really go time and build up for the season and be ready to go come opening day. So yeah, you'd like to see them turn the page now, but for me, I just cannot. I'm not going to get bent out of shape, but anything that happens results-wise in spring training. Like I said, like if a guy's velocity is down or if a guy looks like he's playing hurt or something like that, that's concerning. But like other than that, I'm not going to freak out about Dansby Swanson striking out a lot in spring training. So until this goes into the regular season, that's when I start caring. Like if the month of April is just awful, it's like, what's going on here with Dansby Swanson, right? But I'm not going to worry about it in March.
I kept reading about how many Cubs pitchers decided to develop a sweeping slider, whether it's changing arm angle or grip or getting that kind of action. Now, anecdotally, I don't need to be told that is a difficult pitch to hit. It just is. I also know that Craig Breslow and Tommy Hotovy and these guys are not going to urge this kind of disruption without data. Have you asked them to see it? Like, do you know exactly what is informing the proselytizing about the sweeping slider?
Yeah, it's so some of it is the type of pitches they already throw. Some of it is their arm angle and how they release it, like what they know they can, how they know they can manipulate the ball. They're not just going to every pitcher and saying, you throw a sweeping slider, you throw a sweeping slider. they do pick and choose, and it has to be the right type of pitcher. It's just a really good pitch that isn't that hard to. It's hard to master, but it's not impossible to throw, because if you throw a curveball and know how to get on top of a curveball, it's a similar thought process, but it just obviously moves very differently than a curveball, but that's the thought process. And it clicks for a lot of guys that throw curveballs. There's also been some recent studies that show, and of course, a team like the Rays were ahead on this, but guys that throw the gyro slider, if you add the sweeping slider to your arsenal, it's a really good 1-2 punch. It's one of the most effective sequence pitches as far as getting swings and misses. And talked to a couple guys about that. Julian Merriweather has been really effective this spring because he added a sweeper, but he's kept his old slider. Michael Fulmer's kind of adjusted his slider to be more cuttery, and he's added that with his sweeper, and he's looked great this spring. So they do have guys that they say, with this arsenal, maybe we tweak one or two things with the current arsenal and then add the sweeper.
Dan and I were having a conversation after we talked with Jed, actually, about Nico Hoerner and trying to figure out his value. So help us out, because you're on the ground. You've talked about this with Nico and other people in his orbit. Going forward, considering how the rule changes will increase the value of a player like Nico on the field because he's a shortstop playing second base, do you think that changes the way that agents and teams are going to have to negotiate what is the price of a second baseman going forward?
Yeah, that's really fascinating to me, just understanding what his value is when you're talking about contracts and stuff like that, right? Like his value to the team, I think, is tremendous. Like he's a guy that it was billed as like this great makeup, hard worker, the equivalent of a gym rat for baseball, so baseball rat, whatever you want to call it. He has his head on straight. Like you talk to him, he's a genuine guy. Really seems to, cliche, but he gets it. What's his value as far as an extension? Do you have to adjust how you look at second baseman? I think that's a great question, Lawrence. I don't know. I think we have to see how teams are going to handle this, how agents are going to handle it, because we are looking at the value of a second baseman a little different than we did before these rule changes, because you have to be, if you want to be a good defender at second base, you're going to have to be kind of like have those shortstop skills. And we know he has that. So I think it's interesting. I've thought that he kind of has to capitalize on the fact that he's coming off a shortstop season, and it would be in his best interest to sign an extension now. Talking to more people about that, I don't think that's the case. I think he can still get a similar value and even more, because I think he's starting to tap into a little more power. He may be a better offensive player than originally thought. Not some like middle of the order power hitter. I'm just saying like 15 homers isn't out of the question for him, when I used to think like getting to double digits, which I believe he did last year, would be the ceiling and kind of a surprise. But he showed that he can do that, and he's getting the ball in the air more. He's always made hard contact, so his value. Tim Britton over at The Athletic, I think, comped him to J.P. Crawford. I think he's going to get, if they get this extension done at some point, either this offseason or next, it's going to be in that range and a little bit more.